On March 1st, 2026, Iran did something no one had ever done before. It turned a cloud data center into a military target. 3 Amazon Web Services were hit. 2 in the United Arab Emirates and 1 of them in Bahrain. The first known military attack on the major hyperscaler physical infrastructure in the history happened.
And that translated on the ground into something every business listening will recognize. Banks froze, payment apps crashed, millions of people in Dubai and Abu Dhabi could not pay for coffee.
Nearly 4 months after, as of now, in June, as we record this, AWS still has not fully recovered. The health dashboards says MiCentral First is currently unable to reliably support customer applications. And the recovery, AWS says, it will take several months to complete the fixes.
Now, imagine you run a 42-story commercial tower in Dubai, 3,200 people work in it. Your building management system runs on that same cloud. Your building just lost its brain. And the bill for that hits your CFO's desk, not your IT directors.
And you can see that this is not hypothetical. This is happening right now. And pleasure to be here. My name is Estera Kot. I'm the CTO at Clouds on Mars.
And I'm Sebastian, consulting lead for Switzerland.
And this is the Business Mission Control. And today's episode is what changed on March 1st. Why every business that runs on the cloud has a problem they didn't have before. And how and what your board, not your IT department, needs to decide about.
When most people hear cloud went down, they think of the obvious things, right? Your email might be slower, your SaaS applications unreachable, but that is not what we're talking about today. We are talking, in fact, about what happens when the cloud going down means the building goes down. Because in 2026, more than half of commercial buildings have outsourced their nervous system to a data center that is somewhere else.
Exactly. And even like you hear our tone, this is serious due to the fact that cloud is not in a cloud. Cloud is physical. And now let me unpack that element technically. As you mentioned, Sebastian, the nervous system is somewhere. So here, a building management system, we are calling that a BMS, is a nervous system of every building. Your body has a brain that controls breathing, heartbeat, temperature, reflexes, and you don't think about it. It just works. And here, a BMS does the same, exactly the same for the building, heating, cooling, who gets through the doors, which doors, the elevators, the fire suppression, the energy bill, all of it. And 10 years ago, that nervous system lived inside the building. A server room was there in the basement. It was local, self-contained, and then internet drops, but building was still working because of the local connectivity. And as of now, today, 2026, that nervous system lives in the cloud, a data center that could be 30 kilometers away or 3,000 kilometers away from the physical building. And the building sends the data anywhere from 144,000 to over 1 million sensors, which are reading day to day what is happening in the building. And those data are landing in the data center. And the data center is processing those points, data points, streaming data, and sending back the instruction. And then open this wave, lock the door, speed this elevator up, optimize the energy level because there is no one. So basically, the brain is externalized from the building, physical building. Now imagine your brain was not in your head, but in a hospital across town, connected to your body by a simple phone list. As long as the line works, you walk, talk, breathe normally. The moment the line drops, your body doesn't know how to breathe.
And that basically is a cloud-dependent building, right? And from a business standpoint, this is not fringe, it's mainstream, right? The 2025 ASHB Technology Adoption Survey of 308 building owners and operators found that 47% of organizations actually now run their building management systems in the cloud, and another 45% are planning to do so. The top barrier that was cited in that survey was data security at 49%.
And you will find the link to that survey in the description of this episode. But in a nutshell, they were right to worry. So on March 1st, 2026, Iranian ARGC drones struck 3 AWS facilities, 2 in the UAE, 1 in Bahrain. Structural damage happened, power disruption was there, fire, water damage from the suppression systems trying to contain the fire. And this was the first known military attack on a major hyperscaler physical infrastructure in the history. And in the UAE region, called Mi Central First, 2 of 3 availability zones went down. In Bahrain, Mi South First, 1 zone was knocked out. Then on March 24th, a second drone attack hit Bahrain again.
Here's just a list of some of the things that broke on the ground, right? Careem, the region's ride-hailing platform, kind of like Uber, went down. So millions of people could not get a taxi. The Abu Dhabi Commercial Bank, the Emirates NBD, the first bank of Abu Dhabi, all reported outages, and people could not access their money. HubPay and Alan, 2 major payment platforms, went offline. Shops could not process transactions. Even Snowflake, the data cloud, reported disruptions. Now, imagine waking up and your debit card, your banking app, your taxi app, and your food delivery all stop working at the same time. Not because of a hack, but because a building some 30 kilometers away from you caught fire.
Yeah, and I think that some people may ask why it's shocking, as there are so many security and resiliency logs we were promised to have. At the same time, the situation is showing that not exactly. So as of this morning, the late June 2026, nearly 4 months after the strikes, the AWS health dashboard still listing the Mi Central First region as a currently unable to reliable support customers' applications. So AWS formally told customers that restoring the UAE and Bahrain region will take several months. It's obvious this is the physical infrastructure. And they are urging customers to migrate their workloads to other regions and restore the data from remote backups, which hopefully are available and the customer was doing, hopefully.
AWS has also suspended billing for both regions while recovery work continues. Take a moment with that. The biggest cloud company in the world is offering you free services in their data center because their data center literally was on fire.
Okay, so now we have a 42-story commercial tower in Dubai, 3,200 occupants. The BMS runs on AWS on the region that was hit. 2 of 3 zones went down.
And here is what's going to happen hour by hour.
So the first, the HVAC stops adjusting. The control loop is in a cloud, and the cloud is basically not answering. So set points freeze, CO2 starts building in a conference rooms. Nobody feels it yet, but think of it as a someone quietly is closing all of the windows. So you do not notice that for 20 minutes, but then you will.
And from a business standpoint, this is not just comfort, it is productivity. Allen and colleagues, the 2016 Harvard CO2 study, tested 24 knowledge workers at 3 CO2 levels. At 1,400 parts per million compared to 550, cognitive function scores dropped by half. So crisis response scores were the most affected, 131% higher at lower CO2 versus higher CO2. A sealed conference room, in the end, with 8 people, can reach that level in under 30 minutes. So if your HVAC system goes down, your people are not just uncomfortable, they are thinking slower. In a law firm, drafting a contract or on a trading floor where you need to make split-second decisions, that has direct financial consequences.
Yeah, and how to enter the building if the access control is lost because it's in a cloud and the connection is lost. So it defaults to fail open. So every door unlocks. That's a deliberate safety design. In a fire, you don't want to lock doors just to do not trap people. But this is not a fire in a building. This is a geopolitical conflict 2,000 kilometers away. Every secure door in this very big building is just open, and the security team gets no alert because the alerting pipeline also runs on AWS.
And this is not theoretical. This exact thing happened to Ring Smart Lock users during an AWS outage back in December 2021, so not this specific case. But people were locked out of their own homes because the app that controls the lock depends on a data center in Virginia. And that outage ran for about 7.5 hours broadly. Ring services specifically were down for nearly 6. And the cause? Not a war. In this case, it simply was a software bug.
Yeah, and the next stage is energy optimization, which also stops. So the building had a smart algorithm which draws power when it's cheap, throttle back during the peak hours, and that algorithm is where? In a cloud. And now it's gone. So the building flips to the full draw mode.
The EIA Commercial Building Energy Consumption Survey from 2018 says a US office building spends approximately $1.74 per square foot per year on energy. If you have a 500,000 square foot building, about $870,000 a year. So $99 on an hour averaged. But peak demand charges run 2 to 5 times off peak rates. So during an unoptimized peak window, that baseline doubles or triples. In the Gulf, where cooling is the dominant load and outdoor temperatures top the 40 degrees Celsius, the numbers for sure will be higher. One building, painful. A portfolio of 50 buildings on the same provider in the same region, the meter is running at hundreds of dollars an hour per building with nobody watching. And remember, this outage didn't last hours. We are at nearly 4 months and counting.
Yeah, and what about the building I mentioned? It's very high building. What about the elevators? And as we love to optimize, the modern elevators predict the demand, budgerize route efficiently. And that intelligence is what cloud-based. So without it, the elevators revert to the basic mode. Wait time increase, of course, and the people on the floor, like 31, they need to start walking. And what if there is a person with some mobility impaired which cannot walk? And now going to the next stage, the fire suppression monitoring goes offline. Sprinkles still work mechanically, so the water pressure does not need the internet, but the monitoring system that tells the fire department that floor 17 has a smoke or everything is normal that was also cloud dependent. So the building may now be non-compliant with the local fire regulations just because the cloud is gone.
That's where suddenly a technical outage of a data center becomes a legal exposure. In Germany, as a European comparison point, fire safety fines under state building codes range up to 50,000 euros for violations and up to 250,000 euros for unauthorized construction with fire safety deficiencies. That is the North Rhine-Westphalia Building Code, 2018, Section 84. The real exposure, though, is criminal liability. German Criminal Code, Sections 222 and 229, state if fire safety negligence leads to injury or death, building operators face prosecution. So the civil damages here dwarf the administrative fines. In the UAE, where building safety is enforced by the Dubai Civil Defense, the regulatory and reputational exposure for a premium commercial tower is significant, especially in a market where smart building is a selling point for tenants paying top-tier rents. Now, this is not new, but it probably has never been this dramatic. Cloud outages happened before March. They happen regularly. We are just talking about AWS Ring smart locks in 2021 or those things. Those were a software bug, not a war. But about 7.5 hours broadly, roughly 6 for Ring specifically.
And I remember the July 2024 when the CrowdStrike incident happened. A faulty sensor update crashed 8.5 million of Windows system globally in hour. What we've seen, airlines grounded, banks down, hospitals turning patients away. Not Azure fault, but Azure hosted workloads were hit at a huge, enormous scale.
I remember that one. And the business cost is not new either, right? The Uptime Institute's 2024 annual outage analysis found 10 to 20 high-profile IT outages every year. And over 54% of organizations said their most recent significant outage cost more than $100,000. 1 in 5 respondents said it exceeded $1 million. So almost 40% of organizations had a major outage caused by human error in the prior 3 years.
And here is the new question. So before March, the worst case was a software bug taking you down for hours. But now, after March 2026, the worst case is a missile tracking you down for months. Same architecture, but very different blast radius, which we can't control, or maybe we can. That's the question. So quick vocab, 90 seconds, skip to the next chapter if you already know what is the availability zone. The first one, a data center. Data center is a physical building full of servers, cooling, power, security, concrete and a fiber, nothing abstract, nothing in a cloud. The second, availability zone. This is a like one or more data centers in the same metropolitan area, but must be physically separated. And each zone, each availability zone has its own power cooling. And a single region has at least 3 of those availability zones. Now, a region. A region is a geographic area where the provider operates a cluster of data centers, like multiple zones. Here, an example. Switzerland North is Zurich. Miss Central First is Dubai. East US is Virginia. The region you choose determines whether your data physically sits there and which country's law apply. Now, the next one, a paired region, is the disaster recovery partner of your primary region. So, an example, Switzerland North pairs with Switzerland West, basically Zurich and Geneva, 225 kilometers apart. Same country, different cities, planned failover destination. And now we have the edge. So the last vocab, the edge, local computes, a server inside your building running cloud service on a local hardware. Here, an example, Azure Stack Edge or Azure Arc. The pros of both of them, they don't depend on the internet.
Perfect. So we've got 5 terms: data center, zone, region, paired region, and edge. Hold those for the next chapter.
Yeah, and now redundancy. How cloud providers protect your data. 6 levels, each one bigger than the last. So we are starting with level 1, local redundant storage. 3 copies of your data in the same data center. Different disks protects against a disk failing. Does not protect against the building burning down. But the disk, because they are physical, they can sometimes fail as well. That's the first level. The second level is zone redundant. Here, zone redundant storage has 3 copies across 3 availability zones in the same region. So different buildings, separate power, separate cooling, and this is the gold standard for production workloads. So the next exercise after listening this podcast, check if you enabled zone redundant storage. And here is what March broke. The multi-zone model assumed 2 data centers on a separate power grids would never fail at the same time by accident. The odds are 100% when someone by purpose target 2 of them with, for example, drones, which happened. Now, we know the 2 levels. The level 3 is geo-redundant storage. So again, 3 copies in your primary region, plus 3 more in a paired region, hundreds kilometers away, like Switzerland in Geneva. Very different cities, very different power grid.
So this is the level that would have saved most of the businesses affected by the March attacks. But they didn't have it. They ran single region in the UAE.
Yeah, maybe because of cost, maybe not. But let's progress with the level number 4, read access geo-redundant. So very similar as geo-redundant storage, but you can read from the paired region immediately after anything is happening. So no waiting for the formal failover. So we're getting a copy. Now the level number 5, which is the geo-zone redundant storage, and read access geo redundant storage. I know that lots of words, lots of acronyms, but here zone redundant at home plus geo redundant to the paired regions. So in total, we are getting 6 copies, 3 in your city across separate buildings, 3 in another city, hundreds kilometers away. And this is the maximum protection Azure offers to the storage. That is our new gold or new oil.
Yes, but if you go geo-zone redundant storage or read access geo-zone redundant storage, you're probably paying roughly twice the cost of level 1. So for life critical or regulation critical data, the question is whether you can afford not to pay it.
Yeah, and we are getting used to using all of those applications. So I love, as you mentioned, life critical. And sometimes if some people relying on the simple application, but they really need them because it will cause disruption, should we classify that as a life threat or life disruption or just skip it? But now the level number 6, the last one. That's why we mentioned about Azure Stack, for example. So level number 6 is the edge. This is not the storage tier, it's an architectural decision. And some systems should never leave the building. Fire suppression, monitoring, access control, elevator safety, energy optimization, emergency HVAC optimizations, they should run on Azure Stack Edge or Azure Arc, on those nodes, on the physical machines inside the tower, inside the building, because the building's heartbeat keeps beating, even if there is a data center damage, if there is no internet connection. And the last one matters because the level 1 through level 5 all assume that the cloud is reachable. And in the case of the edge, that level is the only one that is going to survive the total internet loss. And now a few more facts. The Iranian threat is not theoretical if we talk about going forward. Iranian semi-official Tasnim news agency published a target list like Amazon, Microsoft, Oracle, Palantir. The caption, enemy's technological infrastructure, Iran's new goals in the region. So Iran also threatened the Stargate AI data centers, the massive US AI build-out. Every organization running workloads in the Middle East or in a US hyperscaler now is facing the question did not exist a few months ago. So what happens if my cloud provider's data center becomes a military target?
And the answer is not more redundancy in the same place. The answer is sovereign cloud plus local edge. 3 layers. And these are exactly the 3 lines I take into board conversations in Switzerland.
Yeah, layer 1, let's go the recommendation sovereign region. So it means that choose a cloud region in a stable, legally predictable jurisdiction. Switzerland, Germany, Poland, Nordics. Your primary workloads run there. Determines data resiliency, determines data sovereignty. Layer 2, geo-redundancy to the paired region within the same country. Here, Switzerland North to Switzerland West, Zurich to Geneva. If Zurich goes down, Geneva takes over. Data stays under Swiss law either way. The time for layer 3. Layer 3 is a local edge for the systems that cannot fail. Fire suppression, access control, elevator safety, emergency HVAC systems. Here, Azure Stack Edge or Arc, physically inside the building, as there is no internet dependency needed. And here, let's do some analogy. An analogy to a commercial aircraft. So satellite link for weather, road optimization, communication with ground control. This is a cloud layers 1 and 2, as mentioned previously. But the flight controls like steering, throttle, landing gears work even if the satellite link drops. And this is the edge. You don't fly a plane where the steering wheel depends on the Wi-Fi signal.
And probably you shouldn't run a building that way either.
Yeah, now let's summarize the things to remember. 5 things to remember based on our discussion. 1, so cloud data centers are now military attacked that we experienced. March 2026 made that statement real, not just theoretical. And here, drones hit 3 AWS buildings. 2 of 3 zones in the region went down. Nearly 4 months later, still not recovered. And every architecture decision must now consider physical attack, not just software bug or some energy issues. The second thing to remember, the multi-redundancy is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So 2 zones which are hit simultaneously are causing a issue. So for any critical workload, especially in some geopolitically exposed region, geo-redundancy across distant regions or across multiple providers is now the bare minimum.
And third, sovereign cloud is a board level decision. It's not about where your data sleeps for GDPR. It is about whether your operations survive a conflict you didn't start and can't control. A Swiss cloud region might not care about Middle East drone strikes. The Polish region doesn't appear on Iran's target list, but geography for sure is architecture now.
Yeah, number 4, especially related to healthcare and any critical system. So life safety systems, they must never depend on a network called to another country. Fire suppression, access control, elevators, I will repeat myself, these should run on a local edge or they fail at the worst possible moment. For a building, always that is not a nice to have. It's a difference between safe and unsafe.
Finally, 5, the question is no longer how much does redundancy cost? The question is how much does a multi-month outage cost across my portfolio? Energy waste, compounding every hour, regulatory exposure, tenant lawsuits, insurance gaps, reputational damage for every smart building that lost its brain. The CFO, the COO, the general counsel, they all need to be in the room for this conversation. It simply stopped being an IT decision on March 1st.
I'm Estera,
I'm Sebastian.
and this was Business Mission Control.
Show notes, sources, and the public transcript are at our episode page. Link is in the description. If your business runs on the cloud and any of this raise the flag, get the right people in the room this week, not next quarter.
As the topic is serious. And see you in the next episode. Thanks.
Thank you.